one coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keeps dealing me cards, I keep fitting in love.
Yes, people. You know what time it is. You know what it is, G, and we are back in the building. Make sure you guys smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. We are on the road to 400 subscribers. So again, just like to show my love and appreciation to everybody who has already subscribed to the channel. So you guys already know what it is. Please make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you share this out. Now, today, wanted to take a quick look, shall we say, at a defensive midfielder. Now, we already know Liverpool's midfield issues this season. Now, I'm not saying, in regards to this player, I'm not saying that he's a player that Liverpool will sign, but he is a player that, after taking a look at him, especially this season, most notably, but after taking a look at him, seeing how, you know, he kind of works in the system that he plays in, seeing his performances a little bit this season, a few of the highlights and things like that. But, you know, looking at the stats and, you know, how he compares to our current defensive midfielder in Fabinho, you know, I wanted to really, you know, kind of dive into this player. And again, I want you guys to kind of let me know, is this a player that, you know, you think Liverpool should sign? So as you can already, you know, see in the title down below, I was looking at Manuel Ugarte from Sporting Lisbon. Now, the defensive midfielder, Uruguayan, signed for 7 million euros back in the 21-22 season. Kind of, you know, made his way, obviously, in Portuguese football. And he's just blossomed. Ever since he joined Sporting Lisbon, he seems to have just gone up and up and up. Now, last season, when he joined Sporting Lisbon, there was a few people talking about him. Hadn't really looked at him myself, to be honest with you. He wasn't really a player that was on my radar. Had seen him a couple of times, would I say, maybe literally probably about twice last season. Wasn't really someone that I kind of put on the radar, but, you know, this season, and I think it's probably heightened, you know, this season, I feel that because of Liverpool's, you know, midfield issues, this season, it's almost like I've had to look out for more midfielders. I've had to look, you know, a bit deeper at some of the midfielders who are currently out there, some of the midfielders who are doing well, especially the young midfielders, you know, and see, you know, what it is they're doing, you know, how could we maybe incorporate their attributes into this team, you know, under Jurgen Klopp and the way that he wants to play and things like that. So, you know, he was a player that kind of fell into that kind of category. You know, I don't want to lie and say, yeah, I've been watching him for 3 years and he's, nah, it's definitely not been that. I would say it's been more this season. Most notably, I would say in the Champions League, but I have been able to catch a few games in the Portuguese league and a few of the highlights and things like that. And he always seems to be one of the standout players. Now, when I say standout players, I don't mean in terms of, you know, goals or assists. He's a defensive midfielder, so I'm definitely not looking at him for that. I mean, if he got that, that would be brilliant. Of course it would be, but that's not what I'm looking, you know, at when I'm looking at a defensive midfielder. I would put him in the box of, he's a bit of a destroyer. He reminds me a little bit, now I don't want to compare to, you know, one of the best out, the former best defensive midfielders, but a bit like a Javier Mascherano. He's in that kind of mold, but I think with him, the difference between, say, him and a Mascherano is, as much as I still think Mascherano was a good player, you know, he could pass the ball and stuff like that. Obviously moved to Barcelona, so started to learn that way of playing football and things like that. When it comes to Ugarte, I feel like he's a lot better on the ball than, say, a Mascherano. And I feel that he's someone who can keep the ball a lot better than a Mascherano. Again, Mascherano's role was a little bit more different in that Liverpool setup because he was purely there to just destroy. You know, when you've got players like Xabi Alonso and Steven Gerrard, who are, you know, the ball-playing midfielders in the team, your job is to get the ball and give it to these guys. So obviously different roles. Not to say he couldn't do it, but different type of roles. But Ugarte, from what I've seen, you know, with all the stats that we're going to, you know, kind of get ourselves into and stuff like that, he seems like a proper destroyer in that middle of the park. But he does seem like he's very composed on the ball when he does have it. And he's not really someone who kind of gives it away a lot in games. So, you know, I think we've got Fabinho there at the moment. Obviously, we've got Bajcetic, whether you see Bajcetic as a defensive midfielder or, Klopp's, recently started to play him in that left central midfield position. And again, this might not just be for Liverpool, to be honest with you. I don't know anyone else out there is potentially looking for a defensive midfielder. I don't know what his quoted fee would actually be, if he's got a release clause or anything like that. He might already have all of these things. So, I believe there's going to be a few clubs in for him. I don't think it's just, but, I don't think it's just Liverpool. He's going to go Liverpool. But no, I don't think it's that simple. I think a lot of clubs, a lot of top European clubs, he would have been there at Sporting Lisbon for 2 seasons. There's going to be a few people looking at him, looking at his development, looking at where he could possibly go and where he can possibly fit in. But as obviously I'm a Liverpool supporter, I want to look at it from the Liverpool aspect. As I said, we've got Fabinho there at this current moment in time. Now, Fabinho this season, oh my God, where do we begin? Fabinho has been overall this season disappointing. Now, I know obviously in the last few games, people will say that he's been a lot better, which he has. We have to give credit where credit is due. At the end of the day, he has been better than, what we were seeing at the beginning part of the season, all the way through the middle kind of part of the season. And it's only really now towards the back end where we're kind of seeing a better Fabinho. Now, people are going to say there's different components. So whether that might be because of the midfield partners he's playing with, whether that be just because of the amount of football that he's had to play, in terms of he's been playing more or less not every single game, but more or less majority of the time. Fabinho will always kind of start, for Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp when he's fit. Maybe it's the tactics, maybe it's the style. We've spoken about the tactics of Jurgen Klopp before. We've spoken about the style of play that we do have here at Liverpool and how it's not really a sustainable tactic that could live on for years and years and years. It does need to be freshened up. And if it's not freshened up, as we see with players like Fabinho, who are just, you could see flat out tired. There was even a part of the season where Robbo just looked flat out tired, had that little break, where Tsimikas kind of came in and then boom, he's kind of come back a lot more rejuvenated. I think, Virgil van Dijk spoken about being so tired, obviously due to like the World Cup and things like that. So many different kind of components, I think, with Fabinho as to why we're seeing this poor form. And I think with Fabinho as well, especially, signed him from Monaco, that it was like a secret signing. We didn't even know we were getting him in. And then once we got him in, it was like his performance levels just kind of kept rising with every season, especially in that season where we won the Premier League. It just kept rising, man. You were like, this is a very, very good defensive midfielder that, Liverpool have got on their hands. And he was, he was one of the best out there. And this fall from grace that he's had this season. Now, I know Liverpool as a whole have had a massive fall from grace, and next season is going to be very interesting to see how Liverpool kind of turn up, if Liverpool even turn up next season, how certain players who were at the top of their game, how they perform next season. The Mo Salahs, the Van Dijks, the Fabinhos, the Trents, the Robbos, people of this kind of ilk. It's going to be interesting to see how they do next season. Is this just a one season blip, kind of thing where they need this season to just kind of get out of their system? I mean, Liverpool have had 2 out of the last 3 seasons where it's been kind of a bit of a blip and performances haven't really been, that good, to be honest with you. So I don't know if this is the beginning of the end of Fabinho. I don't know what Jurgen Klopp's looking to do with a Fabinho. At one point, it looked like he was going to ice him out and all these kind of various different things. So I don't know when it comes to Fabinho. I don't know really where he stands in this team. I believe if a good enough bid comes in, we'd sell him. And I think we'd be smart to do so. Again, we have already got Bajcetic. We've got Tyler Morton, who's currently obviously playing at Blackburn, but obviously he's been playing kind of centre back / midfield as well. So where he fits into the team, I have no idea. Liverpool looking to obviously potentially buy a Jude Bellingham. Will we have enough money to then go out and get a Manuel Ugarte or play similar to that kind of mold? Does Jurgen Klopp think we need that? He got in Grujic, kind of let him go, went out on loan, didn't really work out, so to speak, came back into the team, and then he's, obviously sold him off to Porto. So again, does he might, I feel like we've got to start thinking more like Klopp, and I keep saying this, and people keep asking me like, what do you mean? And it's a case of, if we don't think like Jurgen Klopp, then we're always going to be left frustrated at the end of the day. He doesn't think like we do. We sit there and we think, well, we need midfielder. We need a left centre side. We need 3 midfielders left. right, and a defensive midfielder. We need all those three things. But I do have this inkling that Klopp doesn't necessarily see it that way. Hence the reason why I mentioned, even if Liverpool were to get this vast sums of money from, new owners or new investors or anything like that, not necessarily to say that we'd go out there and sign 4 midfielders, for example, that, some people want, or 3 midfielders. I feel like we'd get in potentially 2, and then he'd use what he's got around him. Jurgen Klopp likes to use the kind of tools that he's got around him, and he does want to. I do think in some way, subconsciously, he does want to try and bring through as many youth players as he possibly can if they're good enough. And obviously, if they're not good enough, then, he's got to let them go. And hence the reason why we're seeing so much of a Bajcetic, this season. Hence why we see, a Harvey Elliott, 2 young players in the team, experience-wise, and he's kind of got them integrated into the team as quickly as he possibly can. I know he likes the look of Kai Gordon as well. So again, all of these kind of various different things, before we veer off onto a whole different topic, but all of these kind of various different things is why I think it's very tricky to see what Liverpool's plans are for the summer and things like that, because we need to get into the head of a Jurgen Klopp. And that's why I go back to Fabinho in regards to, I don't know what his plan is with a Fabinho. But either way, obviously we look at Manuel Ugarte, as I said, Sporting Lisbon, fantastic player, to be honest with you. The stats and, his performance levels, this season have been very, very good. We take a look here at his heat map. If I take this little banner off for you guys, make sure you hit that subscribe. If we look here at his heat map for Benfica this season, now this is obviously in their Premier Division. You can see SofaScore obviously rated him at 7.04, but look at his heat map there, right there in the center of the park, defensive / central midfield positions, and obviously in a few of the attacking areas. But you can see he operates in that middle of the park, and he's able to distribute, he's able to destroy, he's able to pick out these passes and all these various different things from that central position. And I think that is going to be key for Liverpool moving forward. But again, like I said, not just for Liverpool. I think there are a couple of teams out there, Chelsea kind of being one, I think, who are potentially looking for a defensive midfielder. I know they've got an Enzo Fernandez, but I do feel that they are potentially looking for another one. I think he's a player that maybe we should look at. I'm not banking on him, but I do think that the fee that it might cost to get someone like Manuel Ugarte would make sense, moving forward. Now, got a couple stats here anyway from Manuel Ugarte versus Fabinho. So obviously this is just from this season. If we look here, as you guys can see up on the screen already, 22 games played for Manuel Ugarte in the Premier Division in Portugal, and obviously 24 for Fabinho in the Premier League. Ball recoveries, you can see it already. Fabinho's got 6 point. This is per 90 minutes, by the way. 6.6. Ball recoveries for Manuel Ugarte, 9.3. Absolutely, that's excellent. That already shows me, okay, cool. This is a player who's willing to track back and get that ball back if he does lose it, or if the team loses it in a general sense. Again, he's played 2 games less than Fabinho, so to see that straight off the rip, I'm like, okay, very, very good. 8.8 in terms of possession lost, and 8.9 for Fabinho. So again, less, but he's got 2 more games to catch up, so that could potentially be more by the end of it. And he creates a bit more chances than a Fabinho, 0.7 to Fabinho's 0.5. Now, looking at that straight off the rip, obviously, again, as I said, the first thing that kind of pops into my head was that ball recoveries. And when I look at that ball recoveries, I'm like, okay, cool. That excites me. That excites me. That makes me think, okay, like I said, this is a player who's willing to get that ball back. This is a player who's willing to fight, to get that ball back. And that's something that we haven't seen from Fabinho this season. That's something that Fabinho has lacked. Not just Fabinho, by the way. Now, obviously, I know I'm speaking about Fabinho versus Ugarte, but this isn't just from Fabinho. This is from the whole team. And if you guys have watched my my post-match review from the game against Bournemouth, it's about the application. And this season, we have not seen that from Fabinho. Most notably Fabinho, to be fair. We've just seen someone who's been able to get bypassed quite a lot in games. I remember, famously against Crystal Palace at the early part of the season at Anfield, how they were able to skip past him, I think, for Wilfred Zaha's goal. How they skipped past him, I think it was Eze, in the middle of the park, it just, and that was at the beginning of the season. You know, we were starting to kind of see that. And I know a lot of people have spoken about Fabinho from last season, how his, would I say, powers, you know, have kind of started to wane. Now people are going to start thinking, oh, but hold on, you got to four final, you know, you were en route for the quad and stuff like that. And, you know, Fabinho, Thiago in the middle, you know, that seemingly looked like it was working. I always say this, especially when you have a season like you're having this season. This season doesn't just come out of nowhere. They didn't just wake up one day and all of a sudden everybody just turned crap, and, you know, everyone in the league it doesn't happen like that. These things have always been coming. You have to see, it's almost like you need to go back to the source of why it's happened this way, because you do not go from one extreme to the other. That wouldn't make any sense. There would need to even have been maybe a middle season in there somewhere before you get to the other end. And as we're seeing with Fabinho, you've gone from one extreme where you're helping the team to fight for the quad to then now these kind of performances. You know, it's been coming. We've seen this coming. People are not going to agree with that because, again, Liverpool fighting for the quad last season. So performances, even though in my opinion they weren't really that good, we were getting by. We were winning games due to individual brilliance. You know, Mo Salah scoring this, or Diaz coming in and, you know, exciting the place, and kind of, again, look at the performances, look at the games, look at the goals, look at how we played, and you'll see the pattern. The pattern that didn't just start from this season. It's been there. It's totally been there. But again, when you're winning these games, which is the difference between now and then, when you're winning these kind of games, it's totally different, and it is hard to kind of notice these kind of things. But again, you know, it's neither really here nor there. If you look at the some more stats here, so obviously we've got the aerial duel success. Ugarte, you know, comes out on top, 62.5 to Fabinho's 54.05. Ground duels 14.9. You know, this is ground duels contested. Now, when I saw that is more than double of what Fabinho is contesting, and this is in their Premier League, their Premier divisions. Ugarte's played 2 games less as opposed to Fabinho, and I'm seeing more than double in terms of the ground duels contested. Now, you might say in terms of the role of the player, which would be absolutely fair, and I can agree to that, you know, to some extent. But for it to be more than double, straight away, I'm looking at, this is 2 different types of players straight away. Now, whether Fabinho thinks he's this deep line playmaker / ball winning midfield, I don't know. Whether that's just due to how he's been playing this season, but as I stated before, you know, that Crystal Palace game it's just the first game that popped into my head, but there's been other examples of that where he's not even contesting these kind of battles. He's getting bypassed so easily, you know, in these kind of games. But Ugarte, you know, he's doing pretty well. Ground duels 1, Fabinho 3.3, Ugarte again 8.3. You know, again, more than double. You know, ground duels lost 6.6, as it probably would be, to Fabinho's 3.4. Ground duel success, Fabinho's is 49.18 and Ugarte's is 55.76. So again, Ugarte's coming out on top. Interceptions 2 to Fabinho's 1.4, and Fabinho just edges it on blocks. Well, I can only imagine when you're always late to these kind of bloody challenges, you're out here trying to get back and get that blocking, to be honest with you. And again, obviously context to that in terms of how the 2 teams have obviously fared this season. Sporting Lisbon obviously doing reasonably well in their league and this season as a general whole, and Liverpool obviously doing quite poorly. So context, there always there needs to be context obviously also applied. I don't want to just bash, you know, pause. I don't want to just bash, you know, Fabinho in a sense of, yeah, well, he's just been shit and blah, blah, blah. He has been quite poor, but I don't want to put it on him, just specifically on him, because it has been the entire team that has contributed to why Liverpool have been so poor and are seemingly, I believe by Thursday will be out of all competitions and battling for the top 4. But we look here again, duels obviously contested again, you know, 16.2 to Fabinho's 8.5. Again, Fabinho is not contesting these duels in these games, and when he was at his peak and when he was at his pomp, I can guarantee you after the same amount of games that would have been higher. Again, someone check the stats and obviously come back to me. You know, it could be a slap in my face. I'm going to take the risk and put myself out there, but I can almost guarantee it. You know, when he was in his pomp, after 20, I think it's 24 games he's played in the Premier League, I'm sure that number 8.5 would have been a lot higher. I'm not saying it needed to have been as high as Manuel Ugarte's, which is absolutely excellent, 16.2 per 90 minutes. But at the bare minimum, it needed to be over 10. Jesus Christ. The fact that yours is 8.5, you know, it doesn't really bode well. Tackles made in games. You know, Ugarte's out there making tackles. Again, like I said, he's that destroyer in that midfield. He is the one who's there to break up play. Fabinho is supposed to be the one who is breaking up play, 2.2. You know, Ugarte more than double. You know, take-ons completed again. And this is what I said about Ugarte versus, say, a Mascherano. Now, I don't think that, again, show, you know, the stats might prove otherwise in games and stuff like that, especially the way that Rafa Benitez played and obviously the way that he played at Barcelona. But when you're looking at the take-ons completed, 1.5 to 0.3. You know, Fabinho, what are you doing in that midfield? You know, I'm looking at these numbers. And again, this is just a numbers thing. I don't like playing the game because the game isn't played on numbers. The game isn't played on paper. It's played in real life. But when we're looking at this, again, this is what these data analysts and stat guys, you know, when they're trying to look at players and stuff like that, this is, I'm assuming, one of the things that they were trying to do is trying to compare these kind of numbers in certain areas to players in our team currently and wondering where we can potentially improve. So when I'm looking at certain numbers here, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, take-ons completed. If you're a team who needs your defensive midfielder to progress with the ball, then that would be very, very good. If not, then your number might be as low as Fabinho's, which is 0.3. At the end of the day, we've got players like Thiago who come in there and he might be the one where he's tasked with doing something like that, as opposed to a Fabinho. So in regards to that one, as good as it is for Ugarte, I'm not going to go to hammer and tong, you know, in regards to that. But obviously, you know, you look at the take on success, 57.14 for Fabinho, 56.25 for Ugarte, but obviously Ugarte is contesting a lot more than Fabinho. Now, looking here at the last piece of statistics that I've got for these two guys, unsuccessful passes, 5.1 to Fabinho, 7.3, 2 games more. I mean, that number could potentially change. Well, it will obviously change, but at this current moment in time, when I look at that, I'm thinking, okay, fair enough. Passing accuracy, though. Now, Fabinho's is pretty good. Let's give credit where credit is due. 87.99. That is a pretty good number. That is a very, very decent number. But the fact that Ugarte's is 91.12, and the fact that Liverpool are a team who do want to try and keep possession as long as possible, they are in most games going to be a team who are going to dominate possession. When you've got a defensive midfielder who's got a 91.12 passing accuracy, we might need someone like that just potentially, you know, in the midfield. Long passes attempted, 5.1 to 3.5 of Ugarte's. Again, context applied to that. Very, very good from Fabinho, but again, context, is Ugarte tasked with doing that? Is that the way that Sporting Lisbon want to play? We know that Liverpool are a long ball team. If I'm being totally honest with you, this season anyway, we've been a long ball team. That's mostly what we do. So I expect quite a lot of our midfielders, especially, and Van Dijk and Trent and Robbo, to have high numbers in this aspect. But again, not to take away from Fabinho, because that is still pretty decent. The fact that his is obviously attempted at 5.1. Successful long passes is 2.5 to, Fabinho's 2.9. So even the sheer fact that, Ugarte is not really making as much, he's not too far off Fabinho. But again, Fabinho comes out on top, which is very, very good. Long pass accuracy, 72.58. And Fabinho's is only 56.38. That is quite alarming. That is quite alarming. As I said, Liverpool are a long ball team. So when I'm looking at Ugarte's and his long ball accuracy is at 72.58 and, Fabinho's is at 56, a little bit worried there. Through balls attempted, Fabinho's got that 0.2 to 0.1 just. And passes completed in the opposition half. Fabinho, again, just edges it 24.7 to Ugarte's 24.2. Both really, really good, to be honest with you. Again, context, styles, tactics, and things like that. So, when we're looking at all of these stats and stuff like that, and when we're comparing the two, Ugarte is a lot younger. He's still not in his prime at this current moment in time, but his numbers at this current moment in time are showing me that this is a player that might be worth investing in moving forward. Again, I don't know what the quoted fee would potentially be. Probably looking at upwards of, 45, 50 million potentially for someone like Ugarte. I don't really know. I don't know if he's got a release clause or anything like that. So it's going to be quite interesting. Look at his position. As I said, he can play defensive midfield. He can play central midfield. Again, that versatility is going to be needed at Liverpool. Maybe that's something that between him and a Bajcetic, maybe they swap in certain games. Maybe one plays, the other one drops it. Who knows? I think if you do let a Fabinho go and you would get someone like an Ugarte in, who's a lot younger, a lot more energetic, is going to be obviously jumping into his prime, and we would have him, for the next 5, 6, 7 years. I think if you've got someone who's already at a very, very good level, like an Ugarte, and you've got him at minimum until Klopp leaves. Let's just say Klopp sees out his entire contract. You've got him for those years at best at this level currently, and he's only going to get better potentially in a better team. I think it makes sense, to get someone like that in, as opposed to a Fabinho who's kind of on the way out, and when you've not got that long, especially as Klopp has, it's going to be difficult to try and squeeze even more out of him when he's already given you so much prior. At the end of the day, like I said, he used to be considered one of the best defensive midfielders out there, arguably one of the best, at one point in time. So the fact that we're seeing him on his way out, I'm starting to sit here and think, okay, maybe we take a look at that, and maybe we potentially decide, is now the time that, we try and get a bit of money for him, use that money to get in someone younger, use that money to get in someone a lot more energetic, someone who can do the role that Jurgen Klopp needs his team to do. Because we've seen already this season with Jurgen Klopp's tactics, it's quite simple. It's not basic, but it's quite simple in terms of what he needs his team to do. At the end of the day, he needs his midfield, as we've seen throughout these years, he needs his midfield to be an engine. As soon as he threw in someone like a Bajcetic, who, not even that he's an engine, he's just a lot more energetic, he's younger, he's a lot more fitter than these guys, he hasn't been through this gruesome last 5, 6 years under Jurgen Klopp, he's still fresh. When he comes into the team, you saw the difference in terms of the energy and the pressing and all these kind of intense kind of play with intensity with Liverpool straight off the rip, and that was just by adding Bajcetic. So imagine now if we add in a Ugarte, potentially a Bellingham, and another player in there, all of a sudden Liverpool's midfield, energy. So these are the kind of little things, and like I said, it might not just be for Liverpool. There are other teams out there, I do believe, who might be looking, potentially at a defensive midfielder, who might need a defensive midfielder to, come into their team and, potentially help. And I think Ugarte is a very, very good one. And I don't think the fee is going to be crazy. I do not think Sporting are going to ask, for a ridiculous amount, for someone like an Ugarte. So, look, for me, I would say Ugarte, would I sign him? Yes. Out of 10 at the moment, I'll probably give him a 7, at this current moment in time. Obviously, that could change either way. I think Liverpool should be trying to potentially invest in him now as opposed to waiting. Because I think if we do wait, where we could potentially, regret it, and I really don't want us to do that. But yeah, we'll wait and see. Obviously, on Manuel Ugarte, that's obviously today's video done and dusted. Manuel Ugarte of Sporting Lisbon. Guys, let me know in the comments, what do you think? Should we sign him? Should we not sign him? Is he a player that you fancy? Is there another player out there, that you guys think we should potentially sign over Ugarte? I know there's obviously Kefren Turam, Manu Kone as well. I know those are 2 other players that Liverpool potentially looked at in the January transfer window. Is that something we revive in the summer? Ruben Neves, Mateus Nunes. We're linked to every bloody midfielder in the world, to be honest with you. Any midfielder who does well for about 2-3 games, just know that Liverpool will be linked with them, obviously, in the future. But let me know in the comments, guys. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you go over to the Jerry James Show. Make sure you check out Roms's new show, Roms Knows Bets. Make sure you check out The Equalizer on Instagram, Twitter, Caption Game Crazy. And yeah, man, I'm G and I'm out.